Happy Friday. I'm so happy to see everyone joining. Hi,
Hello.
Riley.
Hey, Topeka.
How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm so honored to be here with you today. I'm a huge fan of your work.
Oh, thank you, Riley. I appreciate that. I
Thank you.
love
I was
imperfect
I was
food.
reading up. I mean, I'd heard about you before, but I was doing some reading this morning, and I just can't thank you enough for what you're doing. I think criminal justice reform is one of the great causes of this century for this country, and we need people like you. So I just want to start by saying thanks for what you're doing. It's a humbling reminder of the work we all need to be doing, and I'm happy to be here with you today to talk about it. And yeah, I'm just really stoked about what you're up to. It's so awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. I was just telling everybody who came on that I got Invisalign, so I'm talking today with a little tiny list, but it's okay. I'm getting, I'm starting to learn how to talk with these retainers in my mouth right now. But nonetheless, I'm very happy to have this conversation with you. And the work that you all are doing at Imperfect Foods is just critical to our community and to people around this country. And so I'm so happy to see so many people starting to join now, and wanting to hear more about, just really the intersections around food insecurity, poverty, and what's happening in our communities around food waste, right?
Yeah.
And so just to do an introduction about you, and then I'll have you talk a little bit about Imperfect Foods for people who are joining who don't know on our side, and then I'll share a little bit about our specific uh, program that focuses on food insecurity, which is Angel Food Project. So I am here, family, to talk to the Associate Creative Director at Imperfect Foods, Reilly Brock. He is the communications bridge between the world of the food system and the general buying public with Imperfect Foods. It's his job every day to dive deep into the complicated landscape surrounding art agriculture and food waste, find and distill the most salient information and translate it into the informative and entertaining content that a wide variety of audiences can understand and benefit from. So thank you, Reilly, so much again for taking the time out of your most very busy day to have this conversation with me.
It's a pleasure to be here. It really is.
Thank you. And for the viewers who don't know, what is Imperfect Foods?
Yeah, so we're a grocery delivery service focused on building a kinder, more effective, better food system for everybody. And a huge part of that is reducing waste, as you alluded to earlier. As you know, and I'm sure a lot of folks joining know, food waste is a tragically large, but also kind of ironically preventable problem plaguing this country. I think, a lot of countries across the world, but especially this country, it's this kind of perverse problem of affluence that our
Mhm.
food system is so big and so powerful that ironically it's become really inefficient, and we've kind of
Mhm.
lost touch with some grounding principles of really how to make the most of everything we're growing and producing. And so Imperfect started about 5 years ago with the goal of saying, what would a better, more efficient, less wasteful food system look like, and how can buying groceries fit into that?
And can you share about some of the statistics that you know about food waste with our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So, some of the best research on this is from the NRDC, the National Resources Defense Council, and they
Mm.
published what was for these type of white papers a pretty bombshell report in 2012 that found that about 40% of our food supply was going to waste. They did an
Wow.
update. Yeah, it's insane. And they actually updated it in 2017, 3 years ago now, and found that that number had pretty much held. So we're wasting about 40% of our food supply. And what's mind blowing is, I mean, when you dig into it, the waste is happening at every step of the supply chain, which is kind of a strength and a weakness of the issue when you think about it. It's sobering to realize that all of us are culpable, right? Like we're all complicit in food waste on some level, but it's also for folks like you and I have this kind of activist streak and wanting to be part of the change. It's
Mm.
hopeful in that there are sites of intervention at every step along the chain. So, as an example, in the 2017 report, NRDC found that about 20 billion pounds of food is never even making it off of the farm. It's going to waste at the farm
Wow.
level alone. So that's really far upstream of the average consumer, but that's where someone like Imperfect can really come in and make an impact there and say, work with growers across the country to find ways to help this stuff get a good home. so that, you know, if they have a field of turnips that are off spec for what stores want to buy, we can come in and say, our customers don't care. They have an open mind. They'll cook it and love it anyway. We'll take it off your hands. We'll get it into people that are going to love it and appreciate it. And it's that kind of agile compassion that's really at the heart of what we're doing. And now we're a full grocery company, so we're doing that with turnips, but we're also doing that with other grocery items. But the mission has really stayed the same of every day we're asking ourselves, how can we make our food system work a little bit more compassionately, a little bit more efficiently, a little bit more agile? How can we make it rise to the occasion of each day and not really impose these kind of strict and wasteful standards on things that kind of the traditional grocery industry built up over a couple decades, and we kind of got to this tipping point, and then folks like the NRDC came out with their report, and folks like Refed is another good one. They've done great research on this that really broke it open for the public. You know, now food waste has been on John Oliver. There's several amazing documentaries about it. So I think it's fortunately not a secret anymore that it's a big problem. But what that means is now it's, you know, the ball's in our court. All of us have a role to play here. And so at Imperfect, we're really focused on the kind of supply side waste, like where is food going to waste in the production system. But specifically in my role, and maybe we can get into this a bit later, I'm also very interested in where are consumers wasting food and where is food happening in folks' homes, because it's not, you know, this isn't like a badge of shame, but we all waste food. It does happen. And my job at Imperfect and our job as a company is really to empower people to make the most of what they're bringing home, because food is precious. You know, food is a blessing. And when we bring that attitude of gratitude to it, it's a paradigm shift. We can do new things that we couldn't do before.
Absolutely. And, you know, when you're talking about some of the statistics, it made me think about, you know, where we have one of our houses, Hope House in the Bronx. It's the Bronx is New York City's hungriest borough.
Really?
You know, more than 1 in 4 Bronx residents, that's 26%, experience food insecurity in New York City. And I know some people like, what is food insecurity? And it's the state of being without reliable access to sufficient quality of affordable and nutritious food. And when you talk a little bit about just people having this privilege, right, or having the access to be able to have types of food, it brings me as to why we started the Angel Food Projects at Ladies of Hope Ministries. So quick funny story. When I was released from incarceration in 2015, actually while I was in, one of my friends was like, I'm working for a company called Instacart, and I make like $1,000 a week delivering groceries. And I was like, $1,000 a week delivering groceries? Like, wow, that's something that I could do while going to school and other things, and that'll be good, you know, as I'm transitioning. And so I applied at Instacart, started working there as a shopper. And it's so funny because I am not fond of grocery shopping. I love to eat. I have a great relationship with food, but just the chaos of the supermarket just gives me anxiety personally.
It's a lot.
Right.
I feel you.
So in working there actually though, and then having to pull people's their grocery lists, it was so interesting to me because, okay, we would say someone is shopping, they want all organic food, you know? Again, we talk about privilege. How many people actually can afford a whole shopping list of organic food? And when there would be, say, an avocado that wasn't organic, after we would pull the entire order, people would cancel their order because there was no way they can have a conventional, avocado. They needed organic, so they would cancel the whole order. And because of cross-contamination and different things as it relates to food, there was no return policy. So what happened was there was these bags of groceries that would just sit. And then, or maybe a driver was stuck in traffic or something happened, and then the order had to get canceled and re-pulled because the order wasn't picked up. And I saw all of this food just sitting. And I asked one day, what's happening with this food? And they're like, well, we're throwing it away, or people who are there at the store, they get to take it home. And I'm like, wait, there are hundreds of thousands of people here in New York that need to eat. And it was Thanksgiving 2015. I had been home only a couple of months, and there were all these turkeys just sitting there. And I was like, so the area manager, her name's Iadeli, and I was like, well, what can we do with this? You know, can I give this out? You know, I'm starting an organization and I want to give it out to the community. And she was like, sure. And so I went to Facebook and I got on. I always had like a huge following, even prior to prison. So I had people, and I just asked, DM me if you need a turkey. And
Yeah.
they were like, people did. I was so shocked. And
Yeah.
so I then just went and I rented a zip car. Like, I'm doing all this free advertising for these companies too. I'm going to have to follow up with them. But I rented
I
a
love
zip
it.
car.
There's such a scrappy approach to this. This is really inspiring to hear about, because we like our company started in a similar fashion. So I'm just so grateful that you didn't settle for waste. Like, you saw waste in your life and you asked yourself, like, this doesn't have to be, how could I be a part of the solution here? And yeah,
No,
someone just commented their food service laws. Yeah, it gets complicated legally. A lot of folks
yeah.
think there's a liability around
Mm-hmm.
donation, but actually the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act of 1996 protects you from liability for donating food in good faith. And so a lot of the work to be done,
See
sorry, I'll
that?
let you go back to your story, but I just found this so
Yeah.
inspiring. A lot of the work to be done is actually clearing up some of these misconceptions that, like, you should be able to donate food. You are empowered to, and it's actually not, you're not legally on the hook for it if you're, donating in good faith. So
Well, I'm so happy to hear about that law. I didn't even know about that. I just knew what my spirit was telling me to do. And that was the only law that I needed, right?
yeah.
So I start that day. It was Thanksgiving Eve, 2015, and I just passed out turkeys. I got in the zip car, dropped them off to people in Harlem, the Bronx, wherever they said they were. And I did it, and I felt so good about it. And so I went back to work after the holiday, and I was like, how can we make this something that we can do all the time? And then birthed the Angel Food Project. And so, like, since then, we've served over 5,000 families with food in the community. We focused on all impacted people who were impacted by incarceration because of my experience. And I realized through that process, like, people were getting food that they never even tried, like almond milk. You think this is partnerships with Whole Foods, Fairways, Wegmans, Costco, like
Yeah.
all of these different supermarkets through the network with Instacart. And as we begin to build and think and scale, it's like, how can we do other things to not only allow people to know that they should have access, but that they also, if they are on some type of SNAP benefits or WIC benefits, that they too, they have food stamps, they can still go to the supermarket and purchase these types of food. And what do they do when they get the food? What can you cook? You can make the same things that you did before. And when you think about incarceration, you think about families impacted by incarceration, there is this idea of, well, you should just be happy to eat, right? Because you're a marginalized community. Just be thankful that you have food. And I did a panel yesterday with Stay a While podcast, and we were talking about how the stuff that they serve people who are in prison, it's like you wouldn't want to eat it yourself. I mean, there was, I laughed with her yesterday. I can laugh in retrospect, but it's not funny. I said I stopped eating chicken when I was inside because the chicken thighs and legs were like the size of my head. And I'm like, there's no way there's a chicken that is, a healthy chicken that is healthy for people to eat like that. But as a part of that, we were then able to take some of the donations that we got, and we were able to send in care packages to the prison for people who are in New York State prison. So we've been able to do a lot through the program, and just really thinking about, how are we tying in and making sure we're building out these partnerships, because there's so many people. I just talked about the Bronx, but then not only are you talking about food insecurity, you're talking about obesity, you're talking about hypertension, you're talking about diabetes, you're talking about, to your point, the relationship of food. And so I'm going back to how you started. I know I shared a little bit about how we did, but tell us a little bit about how it was similar, how Imperfect Foods came about.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for doing what you did there in that moment, because there are folks that have been in that situation of seeing waste in their workplace or their church or their community group, and and you took action, and that's so important. And I hope I already know that there are folks that have heard your story and decided to stand up and take action as well. So I think that's huge. It's actually interestingly similar. Our founders 5 years ago saw a really similar thing. They had actually, their first entry point was in college cafeterias. In their college cafeteria at University of Maryland, our original founder, Ben Simon, noticed that so much food was going to waste at the end of the night in the cafeteria. And he, like you did, came up and asked a question. Does this have to go to waste? Could I take it? Is it okay if I take it? Can I feed people with it? And as you found, the answer was, sure. No one's ever asked that question before. And I think, like, when I'm thinking about the model and kind of where our different worlds intersect here, like I think that's a really important kind of takeaway is sometimes it's just about asking a question that maybe others have been a little timid, a little shy to ask. And, you know, with a problem as big as food waste and food insecurity and these dietary diseases you bring up, like it's so pressing. We all, I think, can do a better job about asking those unasked questions. You know, why is this? Does this have to be this way? You know, who is funding this? Can we do this a little differently? Can we do this more compassionately? And so, yeah, they got their start with a college cafeteria example, and very quickly, I think it's interesting. It sounds similar to your work. They started to ask follow-up questions. Okay, where else is their food going to waste? And one of the first answers they got was, you need to go to farms. Because as great as it is that you're talking about cafeterias, there's so much food that never makes it to cafeterias, never makes it to restaurants, never makes it to grocery stores. And so it's that desire to ask the hard but important follow-up questions. That's really how we got started as a company. And that's really what's continued to cause us to grow is asking those hard questions and saying, is this waste inevitable? And when you ask that question and when you put it to people compassionately, it's almost always no. It's not inevitable. Waste is a choice. It's not a fact of life. And I think that's just been a really empowering takeaway for us over time is, yes, sometimes right now in our society, the default option for food is to go to waste or get undervalued, and that's too bad. But all it takes is asking a couple of good follow-up questions and proposing something better like you did. And that's the seed of change right there, you know? And yes, it takes vigilance and being connected to people and compassionate and, you know, keeping up those follow-up questions and keeping up your infrastructure. And I think a main thing that's important to think about here is food, like you know this really well, food presents a really weird logistical challenge. It's not like moving socks around the country. You know, you have weeks and months to move socks around if that's what you want to do. And people need socks too. With food, you have days, you know.
That's right.
This stuff is dying as it comes out of the field. So it presents a distinct supply chain problem. And I think this year, 2020, we've all realized how fragile and important our supply chains are. And so this is kind of the nut I think a lot of these different organizations, including Imperfect, are trying to crack is food doesn't behave like other things. However, it is such a crucial challenge to get food where it's needed most. And something we've learned at Imperfect is the fundamental problem is not that we're not producing enough food. We're actually producing more than enough food. The challenge has always been a distribution, a supply chain question, a logistics question. And those aren't always really compelling questions to answer from the outset. They can seem really thorny and complicated. But again, I think your example is such a great reminder. All it takes is a couple questions and keep going. You know, ask all it takes. Someone has to kick it off, and you kicked it off. And I think that's just really awesome and really admirable.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I saw a question or comment about the prison food system and the educational system and the amount of money that the prison system gets versus what the educational system gets. And, you know, I can't argue that. Prisons are for profit. And that's just what happens. But it doesn't mean, and I'm not going to speak about schools. We know that children are not getting the healthy foods and things that they need. They're not even getting balanced diets and balanced meals, especially now in COVID, you know, because the kids get these drop-off packages and things like that, or they can come pick them up, And when I was working the polls for Election Day, I was working at a school and I saw some of the things that were there. And I'm like, wait, kids are supposed to be eating this? You know, it was like little chicken nuggets that were still cold and seemed uncooked. And, you know, I get the theory of you want a person to have a meal, but they also need to be able to have access to those healthier foods, even if they look imperfect, right? But in the prison system specifically, there is this myth, you know, and from different prisons, one prison to another, your meal options will change. When I was in a county jail in Virginia, they gave us this tri-colored bologna every day with 8 pieces of white bread. You got milk that was out of date and spoiled often. You didn't get access to fruit, although you were supposed to based on the FDA and the regulations that they had in the state. But there are privatized institutions. There are institutions where they just misappropriate funds and do different things. So this is why. And then you have to think about, when I think about women, you have women who are there who are pregnant and their unborn children have to eat this food too. And so they come out. So, you know, a whole nother conversation for a different time. But I just wanted, as I saw some of the comments coming in, you know, that's why it's so critical to have conversations like this, right? When you have people that actually live the experience versus the data, because a lot of times those two things don't match. It's completely different, which is why in our communities, often, to your point, there are food that is being produced. So there's enough food. It's how is it being distributed? You know, when I think about Harlem, and the years before being in Harlem, and you never would see almond milk on in the and I'm just using almond milk for whatever reason. I'm allergic to nut milk, but you know, almond milk. But just to think about that, you never saw that in the supermarket. Now we have Whole Foods. That's because the demographic changed. The things that they want changed. And I reside in the Bronx. And before there was diversity in my neighborhood, you didn't have all the different access and types. You didn't have both organic or conventional. You had whatever they were able to get you. And so I think, you know, as we talk about, you know, making sure we're looking at farmers, we're looking at community-based organizations, we're looking at, you know, grocery stores, we're looking at the educational system and the prison system, that there are huge disparities in who gets access and when. And like everything else, we have to acknowledge that. And I think that also leads me to talking about your reduced box program, and also some of the things that you do around your holiday season initiatives. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, what is the reduced box program? How can people get access to that who may not typically think that they can afford access to imperfect foods and your products?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk to that. You know, a key part of our company's mission is really making food more accessible to everybody. And, you know, part of how we do that is the delivery model, right? Kind of breaking down this old idea that you need to be able to travel to the grocery store. We essentially bring the grocery store to you, which is kind of a fun new way of doing stuff. But the reduced cost box program is amazing. Basically, this is a box that we subsidize for anyone that qualifies for SNAP benefits, you know, formerly known as food stamps. So anyone, we believe basically everyone should have the right to healthy groceries, no matter where you live, no matter how much money you make. Unfortunately, right now, the reduced, basically, SNAP benefits can't be used online. There's like this weird bureaucratic red tape that the US government has put up. Recently, they changed it so that big box folks like Amazon and Walmart, they're doing a pilot with them. So you can use SNAP benefits to get online groceries from Amazon and Walmart, I think in some areas, but it's not widespread. And what's funny, smaller grocers like Imperfect, we still cannot accept SNAP benefits. So we basically innovated and said, you know, this can't wait. We need to create our own model now. So that's why we have the reduced cost box program. So anyone who's signing up for Imperfect, if you qualify for SNAP benefits, you can get a reduced cost box. I can throw a link in the chat, or we could post it here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, if you go to imperfectfoods.com/reducedcostbox, there's with a hyphen between cost and box. I can throw it in the chat in a little bit. But if you head to imperfectfoods.com/reduced-cost-box, you can learn all about the program. We have about 10,000 households that have used it so far.
Incredible.
And this is it's an additional discount on our groceries. Yeah, it's about 33%, that's right. And basically, in full transparency, folks, like, we do not make any money on these boxes. We're not doing this program because it's a profitable thing from a business standpoint, but we're doing it because we believe it's the moral thing to do. It's the right thing to do. So I would also say that to anyone who's listening who is an Imperfect customer, who's paying the normal full price, your subscription is subsidizing these reduced cost box subscriptions. So I also hope that's kind of a fun, empowering takeaway, that if you're able to pay full price, we really appreciate that, in part because it really helps others who might not be able to afford healthy food like that. So it's an important program. I'm really proud of it. I think more folks should know about it. We're always trying to do what we can. No, thank you so much for posting that in the chat. Really appreciate that. Yes, I'm trying to shout it from the rooftops. Seriously, anyone who needs access to discounted food, this is one way to get it. I would go back to your earlier point, though. You know, as we were talking about all this, if this problem of food insecurity and food waste, it's happening on so many levels of our society. We are going to need change on multiple levels. So part of that is companies like us. Part of that is governmental regulations, making it easier to donate, making it easier to waste less food, making less waste the default instead of the exception. You know, In the future, I would hope folks like you don't have to go out of their way to prevent stuff from going to waste. That's the norm. Like, we want our kids and our grandkids to be thinking about, the stuff left over after these Instacart drops going to waste. We want them to think about that as, that's outrageous. That can't happen. That shouldn't be a default option. And so, yeah, that's something I think about and talk about a lot here is we've got to be thinking at every level. We're talking individual level. We're talking civic action. We're talking government. We're talking nonprofits. We're talking folks all over the country. This isn't a geographical issue. This is an American issue. And I think a similarity I was thinking about going into this chat with you is with criminal justice reform and food waste, I think it's actually blessedly nonpartisan. That is pretty widespread support for this. If you talk to folks just as Americans, human being to human being, we all know we can and should do better.
That's right.
When you talk about, I mean, from my standpoint, like, look, wasting a curvy carrot is unfortunate. Wasting the potential of a human being, that's unforgivable, right? And I think as a society, we're starting to wake up to that, thanks in large part to the work of folks like you, Michelle Alexander, Brian Stevenson. There's so many great advocates now that I think are really giving me hope, but we all got to keep pushing. We got to keep pushing together. We got to keep having these conversations, asking those hard follow-up questions. And I've seen with food waste and Imperfect, that's how you can get kind of what starts as a niche issue into something that suddenly every American is talking about, cares about, is taking action on.
That's right. I mean, I have nothing to add on what you said, but I applaud you in your work and the way that you have taken this approach. And I see people are happy, about paying full price. I'm looking at the comments in the chat like, wow, I can't imagine, I'm happy I'm doing that because now they know that they're actually supporting other people who typically couldn't afford it. And then I also saw people like, what's the reduced box program? So the fact that we're even having this conversation is opening up opportunities for more people to have access. And lastly, what I saw, which is so empowering and so true, that they said gut health is directly compared to mental health. And it is critical because, when I think about the number of women who are incarcerated, it's almost 100% of all women who've been incarcerated, they actually have been diagnosed with some type of mental health issue, whether it is anxiety and depression to more something severe like schizophrenia, a multiple personality disorder. And so when you think about really having that access to that healthy food, that really, really can help even changing the trajectory of that person before there's even something that leads them to incarceration and through incarceration, but also generations to come with their children. And so I think the other question that I had around the box, what is the average cost of the box? And how often, if you're ordering these boxes, are they customizable? And how often do you receive your groceries once you order?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all great questions about kind of the nitty gritty here. So to answer your question, the cost varies basically because, to your second question, you control what goes in it. So it's like a grocery store you browse online, and you can get your order every week or every other week. You're in the driver's seat of what it is. And we have actually unveiled some pretty cool new features recently where you can basically build like a favorites list. So let's say every week you want to get your onions, your carrots, your cabbage, your kale, some rice, and there's that one coffee you really like. You can actually now build like a favorites list. So we'll automatically add those to your cart. Imagine walking to Trader Joe's and your favorite stuff is just in your cart at the door, right? It's pretty cool. It saves you a little time. So we have a favorites list, and we also have a never list. So if there's something, if let's say beets aren't for you, no judgment, beets aren't for everybody. Brussels sprouts, I know, are another polarizing one. You can actually say, I never want that, and we'll never recommend it to you or put it in your cart by default. But the fun part is, so we have that just to save you a little time and stress, and then the fun part is, again, it's a fun kind of scavenger hunt every week because our inventory changes every week based on what's in season in the fields from our farm partners, and also what cool food waste stories we're working with. So, during COVID, actually, we got a lot of fun new arrivals to our grocery lineup, in part because supply chains had been disrupted. So we were working with a popcorn manufacturer that used to sell to movie theaters. The movie theaters all canceled their orders because movie theaters aren't open right now, as I'm sure folks have noticed. So we suddenly had a bunch of popcorn. And that's the type of fun kind of serendipity that you'll find with Imperfect that I think
Mm-hmm.
you don't always find elsewhere. And what's fun about it too is underneath the fun surprise of, oh, they have a cheese and cracker tray this week, or they have popcorn, or they have this interesting salmon I like, is there's often this kind of fun waste scavenger, waste rescue angle to it. So you're in control as the buyer, which is fun. So you get to pick what you like. And the other fun thing is there's always new kind of fun arrivals. So we're hoping to help broaden people's horizons a bit in a fun way, kind of gently nudge people to try cooking stuff maybe they haven't tried before. But also to your earlier point, just give you the basics and those staples that you need to have a healthy diet, whatever that looks like for you, you know? But I would definitely just echo your point that, you know, it's really clear at this point, you know, the jury is not out. We all know, like, eating a lot of fruits and vegetables is key to a healthy diet, no matter where you live, no matter what state of life you're in. That's got to be the bedrock. And that's something I'm really proud of about the work we do is through both the box, but also some of the recipe content, some of the tips and tricks we write and share. You know, that's a way to help empower people to eat more fruits and vegetables, to become a bit more of a resilient, empowered, flexible cook. And I think that can have really fun benefits down the road as well.
That is super, super cool. And when we think about like going down the road, right? You know, we're heading into the new year. We're heading into the holiday season. In the next couple of weeks, we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas, we have Kwanzaa, we have Hanukkah, we have New Year's, and every other holiday. I think I covered most of them, at least I know about, coming up. And I know that, you know, you actually, Imperfect Foods recommends that people who are going out of town to donate their grocery boxes instead of skipping their delivery. That is super, that's brilliant. I know you told us last year Imperfect Foods gathered 8,000 donated boxes and gave them to your nonprofit partners. So say more about that. And I know you have a new member in me. I love this. And you know, I'm hopeful that our community will also be able to benefit from some of the donated boxes through our Angel Food Project and our volunteers and partners. But can you talk a little bit more about that also?
100%. So this program started in large part because our community demanded it. Folks were saying, I want to donate my box. And a company like us, we would be dumb if we didn't listen to that. So last year, we kind of hacked it together at the last minute, as one does as a food startup. And yeah, like you said, last year we donated around 8,000 boxes all across the country to different nonprofit partners. So that was exciting and humbling to see that there was that support for that, and folks were so willing to do so. And again, to anyone that did that last year who's watching, thank you. The generosity really means a lot to me. It really means a lot to our whole team. And I think it's another way I've seen the Imperfect community go above and beyond this. You know, this is more than just kind of a customer store relationship. I've seen really empowering examples of folks really seeing this as a community and the chance to invest in compassion. And I think that's just delightful to see in this world that can at times be so antagonistic and polarizing, to remember that generosity and compassion are alive and well. We saw that last year. I think this year, I really hope we can beat that number, right? We got 8,000 orders donated last year. This year, we've made it easier than ever to donate your order. So if you're a customer, instead of hitting that skip button, we've added this functionality to just hit donate instead, and then we'll handle it from there. We'll basically work with a nonprofit in your region to get that box to them so they can enjoy the food, because that's just kind of a through line of our company, honestly, is anytime we see a chance to prevent waste and spread some generosity and compassion, we're trying to do it. And I think the holidays are a natural time to really be doubling down on that, right? We know it's a fact of life. Folks travel, they skip, they need to go out of town. We're not, no judgment, we all got to live our lives. However, if you want to just keep it going while you're gone, we're trying to make that easier than ever this year. So if you're listening and you're a customer, I hope you check that out if you're headed out of town. If you're not headed out of town, also, I would add that we have a lot of really fun holiday stuff this year. We're talking pies, we're talking seasonal vegetables, we're talking seasonal soups, spices, proteins, meat alternatives, dairy, pantry staples, like all that stuff. We're really trying this year to be a one-stop shop for the holidays, in part because I think we've all felt it. Like, this has been a really disruptive year to our schedules, to our mental health, to our wellness. So anything we can do as a company to help people take that breath, do that nice thing for themselves, maybe their mom, their dad, their siblings. Like, let's take a breath, I think, collectively. And this year with our holiday cooking, I think it's a great chance for us to all put a little bit extra love in there, a little bit extra generosity. You know, maybe bake some cookies to that neighbor, and, you know, in a socially distanced way, drop them off. I don't know. I think just I'm of this mindset recently. I'm starting to feel hopeful again this year. I'm of this mindset recently, like, there's a lot of inspiring stuff we can do if we start to think a little bit generously, right, and outside of the box.
Absolutely.
That's kind of where we started this conversation at, and that's kind of where this company started. But I think it's always just worth remembering and reminding ourselves there's always more to do, you know?
That's right. And I am just really, really grateful again for all the work and for the time that you spent with us today. I am so looking forward to becoming a member myself, and also encouraging all of my friends and family to do so. You know, I know that everything that you started was based on somebody asking, and it was rooted in their generosity. So from our conversation, I have so many conversations, so many thoughts. So offline, I'm going to be asking for a few things that help to support the communities that we work with around the country as well. And so just for everyone, again, to know where they can go to sign up to learn more information. I know we put about the Reduced Box program in the chat already, so anyone can scroll up there. And when we repost, we'll make sure we put that link up so people can view this later. But how can people reach out to you? How can they follow you on social media, learn more about the program, and become members as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So be sure to follow us at Imperfect Foods. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, not TikTok yet, although we're talking about it. Basically, yeah, definitely give us a follow to Imperfect Foods. That's a great way to just stay in the loop. What are we up to? What are fun initiatives you can get involved in? Even if you're not a customer, there's still stuff you can do to help support some of our nonprofit partners. There's still fun cooking tips and tricks and recipe ideas we try to share pretty regularly there, just to be a beacon of resources, right? And we want to help everyone relate to food in a more positive way, waste less of it at home. So definitely, yeah, give us a follow on social. If you want to learn more about the Reduced Cost Box program, again, I know you're going to throw a link to that, but if you head to imperfectfoods.com/reduced-cost-box, you can learn more about that. Or honestly, I believe if you just Google Imperfect Foods Reduced Cost Box, it should come up. But yeah, definitely check it out. If you or someone you know needs help with groceries and would qualify for SNAP benefits, or formerly known as food stamps, we do want to try to be part of that conversation, try to help you out if we can. But other than that, yeah, I would just say please do follow us on social. Leave us a comment. You know, let us know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what food causes mean something to you, because that's a lot of where we get our ideas from. You know, to your point earlier, is listening to people and getting pushed to do stuff. So
right.
Definitely give us a follow on social. Leave us a comment. Let us know what recipes you need help with, what ingredients you find yourself wasting the most, what nonprofits you find yourself inspired by, you know, like Ladies of Hope Ministries. There's so many great folks out there. So let's be a resource for each other. And I'm so excited about this holiday season and kind of hearing where everyone's at, seeing what they're cooking, hearing what nonprofits they're excited to support, and let's keep this thing going.
Absolutely. And I just also implore everyone to please follow the Ladies of Hope Ministries at the LOHM across all social media platforms, and also at Angel Food Project, also on Instagram. So I thank you again, Reilly, so much for taking out the time to speak with us, to share the incredible work that you're doing at Imperfect Foods. Looking forward to building partnerships and collaborations with you and our Angel Food Project. And I guess, to your point, remember generosity, remember compassion, remember empathy, but remember action, that it is each and every one of us that can act in whatever capacity we have to make life just a little bit easier for our neighbors. So blessings to everyone. Thank you so much. And we will talk soon.
Topeka, thank you so much. It's been my distinct pleasure. It's been an honor to be here with you. And please keep up the great work. I'm a huge fan of what you're doing.
Bye, everyone.